South Asia that can claim an increasing population of brown bears. If the pug habitat is to be protected, the local communities must be given a voice, a role in the conservation efforts, and alternative means of livelihood. The future of the species in Pakistan, and perhaps the region, may depend on finding a solution to this challenge. Only then can the park and its biodiversity be protected so that future generations can enjoy this valuable part of our natural world.
Assalamu alaikum, you're watching PTV World News. I'm Humashmi Handy with the headlines. Prime Minister Imran Khan emphasizes on regional peace and connectivity for poverty alleviation, economic growth and prosperity in the region. He is addressing the opening session of the first two-day Islamabad Security Dialogue. Chief Minister Punjab Usman Buzdar meets Prime Minister Imran Khan in Lahore. The Prime Minister briefed on administrative matters and progress and development projects in the province. Air Marshal Zahir Ahmad Babar has been appointed as the new Chief of the Pakistan Air Force. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi reiterates the OIC Foreign Ministers' call to the General Assembly to mark 15th of March as a day to combat Islamophobia and take steps to curb discrimination against the Muslims worldwide. Sheikh Rashid Ahmed says public rejected PDM's narrative. The Interior Minister calls upon the opposition alliance to back the government's initiative of election reform. 61 more people die of the coronavirus, while 2,351 test positive in the country during the last 24 hours. 575,867 patients recovered so far. US President Joe Biden warns that a deadline to withdraw all American soldiers from Afghanistan by the 1st of May as part of a deal with the Taliban is possible but tough. And that is all for the moment. For more details and live streaming, log on to our website world.ptv.com.pk. You can also look us up on the Facebook page of PTV World and follow us on Twitter at WorldPTV.
the era of global news coverage, we aim to tell the truth. Through meticulous discussions and in-depth analyses about stories that matter the most. We underline key events as and when they happen. Watch Newsroom with me, Umar Khalid Bhatt, for a daily roundup of the latest international and local top stories.
There will come a time when we shall live in the valleys of heaven. The days we spend, the nights we cry, we wonder, but you know why. For God has sent us, please don't torment us. Just turn only, therefore shine. You can't retrieve us, so please believe us. Just turn only, therefore shine.
Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farrukh Pitafi. Once again, we have to talk about the nitty-gritty of Pakistani politics because yesterday a big development took place, and I'm of course referring to the PDM's senior leadership meeting in which it seemed that People's Party and PMLN were not on the same page. Since yesterday, two very interesting things have happened. One, the government of Pakistan, especially when it comes to, you can see the railway minister, interior minister, and other office bearers as well, speaking to the media, have toned down their rhetoric regarding People's Party. That is one very interesting development. On the other side, when you listen to People's Party's representatives as well, if you remember yesterday we had a representation, there too you see some kind of civility returning to the discourse. So is there a possibility that both sides are coming together, moving closer? One question that we kept on asking yesterday and today, we have at least an alibi as to what exactly happened, why People's Party took a position that it took, and then Maulana Fazl Rahman complained that the entire proceedings somehow leaked to the press. And in that, today Maulana Fazl Rahman and PMLN stated that People's Party said that it needs to consult its CEC, Central Executive Committee, and after that they'll have some kind of answer. But then the reporters who actually broke the news actually kept on telling us that that is not essentially the issue here. Even resignations are not the issue here, even though People's Party is actually not ready to resign. But that is an issue that was always dead and buried. The actual issue is the leadership position in Senate, leadership of opposition. And because at the start of the entire exercise, PDM had thought that it is going to succeed in electing Yusuf Raza Gilani as the chairman, they had developed an equation in which chairman, we know, was going to go to the chairman position, was going to go to People's Party, deputy chairman was going to go to JUIF, and then opposition leader was going to go to the PMLN. But they didn't prepare for the contingency in case they lost. And now they are actually squabbling over this. So it is a matter of fact that the only person really angry at this moment is Maulana Fazlur Rahman, because he thought that he has been betrayed again. But regarding People's Party and PMLN and they're getting together, it doesn't seem that they are just going to walk away from each other. We are going to talk about all these matters and more. Remember, today Prime Minister of Pakistan wrote a letter to the Speaker National Assembly asking him to form a committee to introduce some reforms into the electoral process. And then he spoke about other priorities as well. We are going to talk about all these matters and more. In order to help us understand these issues in the studio, we are joined by Javed Jadoon Saab, a senior analyst, a senior journalist and whatnot. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Representing PTI, we are joined by young voice Barrister Abdullah Mumtaz Kahlon, and he is going to help us understand the perspective of his party. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Rana Ehsan Afzal Saab joins us on Skype, and he is going to represent Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz. And remember that while others have toned down their rhetoric, PMLN has not. Rana Saab, thank you very much for being part of the program. Let me start with you, Javed Jadoon Saab. Where do we go next, sir?
Thank you very much, Farrukh. I think yesterday's development wasn't an unexpected development because Pakistan People's Party was never on board as far as resigning from the assemblies was concerned. Okay. It was more of a demand from Maulana Fazlur Rahman and Pakistan Muslim League, and given the stakes in the system, Pakistan People's Party would like to retain SIN rather than losing it by tendering resignations from provincial and National Assembly, and as well as from Senate as well. Okay. So I think it was a pragmatic approach on part of Mr. Zardari's Pakistan People's Party, and I fully endorse, in my personal opinion, politics is all about possibilities and all about reaching certain amount of conclusive agreements as far as a peaceful democratic movement is concerned, because the era or the times of protest demonstrations and long marches, Farrukh, in my personal opinion, is no more there, because we have seen in the past as well such movements never produced the kind of results which were expected from such movements. In many cases, in fact, the results were quite opposite what the political leadership desired, like in 1977 and even in 2014 onward as well. So I think Maulana Fazl would be definitely a disappointed man, but unfortunately he doesn't have the kind of stakes in the system which People's Party has. And on the contrary,
when you say that People's Party has stakes in the system, are you implying PMLN doesn't?
No, in terms of having a government in SIN, I think those stakes are larger than what Pakistan Muslim League N represents in the system.
But Shehbaz Sharif is the president of PMLN, is opposition leader. He's incarcerated, and because of his parliamentary status, he gets some kind of reprieve whenever he wants to come out. So they have stakes. Perhaps Maryam Nawaz doesn't have stakes, right?
I agree with you, and we know that there are a certain amount of differences within Pakistan Muslim League and as well. There are doves and there are hawks as well. Okay. And we know while they represent the party on television talk shows, we can understand that it's a kind of a visible difference of opinion between the two camps represented by Mr. Shehbaz Sharif and Maryam Nawaz as well.
As we move forward, we are going to talk to a decent, hawk in the party as well. He is very civil, but he is also a hawk. But first, let me actually bring in Barrister Kahlon. Let me ask you a very simple question. And I have listened to many commentators, and I have read many writers who keep on implying that your party doesn't have what it takes to reach out to the political opposition. Do you have that kind of skill?
Firstly, I would like to say that my party does indeed have the skill to reach across the political divide and try to bridge that gap. However, we're faced with an amalgamation of parties who refuse to sit with us on issues that matter. And when I say issues that matter, I mean national security issues, issues that affect our state, not our government, but our state at the international level. You saw how the PDM, especially Muslim League Nawaz, tried to torpedo the government's efforts when it tried to bring in the FATF legislation as well. So
yeah, well, let us go a bit earlier than that.
Yes.
You are saying that they are not ready to sit with you. Remember when COVID-19 actually started, and there was a meeting which was chaired by the Prime Minister. Opposition came, the Prime Minister came, he spoke, and he left before the opposition could speak. Do you think that it is opposition which is refusing to talk?
I reiterate my response that it is indeed the opposition, and that meeting that which you're referring to was one which was organized by the Speaker of the House, Asad Kaisar Saab. Prime Minister came, he introduced what the government's response was to be, the measures that would be bringing to help curb coronavirus, and once he had had it say, indeed he left. The floor was then left open to all the other political parties to have their say, which they did at that time.
To talk to whom?
To talk to the Asad Kaisar Saab.
But Asad Kaisar Saab is not the policy maker. You are talking about policy maker being Prime Minister.
We had
who left.
Leader of the House, Shahmood Qureshi Saab, was also present in the meeting. Leader of the parliamentary party was seated, as well as
other. Yeah, but we are talking about parliamentary side, right?
Yes.
Not the executive.
Yes, but Shahmood Qureshi was there representing the Prime Minister in that meeting as well. We had other leaders, governmental ministers. We had
another example. You have to actually, today, you are actually complaining about election commission. Remember how its chief was nominated and appointed? The Prime Minister had to speak to the leader of opposition. That never happened. Then there had to be a committee, then there had to be reconciliation committee. You went to the court and it came back to the committee, and the committee picked a name. And today you have complaints about the man. Why not actually start reaching out and actually talk? Prime Minister will have to talk to one of these people.
Mr. Pitafi, the thing is that the Prime Minister has tried to make overtures to the leader of the opposition and other opposition leaders, but each time he talks to them...
Hold this thought, because I'm going to come back to you. I think that overtures might be on television, through television, but like you and I are talking, perhaps not. We'll talk about that. Let me bring in Rana Ehsan Afzal Saab. Rana Saab, is PDM dead?
Is alive, and I think PDM on its way has had a lot of success.
It is alive. Can you feel the pulse, sir?
Yes, I saw the pulse by today's polls given by IPSOS and Pulse consultants in NA75, and the polls and the survey was saying that PMLN is ahead of all parties in Dhaka. So I think PDM has made its mark. We did it in the
PDM or PMLN? I'm sorry. PDM was never an electoral alliance, save the Senate election.
Electoral alliance, but the first phase dealt with putting up a narrative that this hybrid regime is not working, and interference into politics, into judicial decisions, independence of judiciary, media, the foreign policy, inflation, all of that. And we talked about these things, and we talked about the common man, the problems being faced by them, and that narrative was bought by the people of Pakistan, and hence we saw the results in the by-election. So yes, the plan has been delayed about the long march, and the main reason is that the second biggest opposition party, People's Party, had reservations about giving had reservations about giving their resignations before the long march, and we thought that this long march would not be effective without the resignation. So yes, there was.
But you realize that these two positions are poles apart. I mean, one says that you have to resign. The other one says we are not going to do it. How do you reconcile the two positions?
As for now, they've been given time and they're going to discuss it in their CEC. But obviously, resignations have to be given by all the 10 parties for them to be effective and for them to have an impact, which is to get rid of this government.
All the 10 parties being all the parties which are present in the parliament, because not all of these 10 are. Am I right?
Yes, obviously. We recognize that People's Party has a provincial government and the stakes are higher for them, but they committed to us on this for the longest period since the start of PDM, and they were towing the narrative of PDM, and we are hopeful that they will decide in favor of it. But I feel that nothing has been lost. Our 26 agendas, they stand. This hybrid regime is not bringing any results. Inflation is not ending. Mismanagement of the economy has not finished. So,
Sir, with due respect, you keep on calling it hybrid regime. With due respect, if we start, other guests start name calling, then it will never end. Can you talk about this government rather than putting a name to it, sir?
Of course. This system in Pakistan, which has been continuing since the 73 years, that democracy is not that strong and it is not so rooted in Pakistan. So this system where constitution is not followed properly and there are certain institutes which interfere into political matters, that is what I mean when I say this regime.
Yeah, so, but remember, when one is pointing to someone else, three fingers point to oneself. And remember, your party was also, it emerged out of the same kind of dispensation. If you imply that there is some heavy influence of the establishment, which you still have to prove, but yours is a proven case.
I agree with you, Pitafi Saab.
Thank you very much for agreeing with me.
Zulfikar Bhutto, he came through Ayub Khan. He was a cabinet member, and we have this history in Pakistan where more than 3 decades have been ruled by the military dictators. But the thing is, if we're going to continue in this same direction, then we should not have this debate. But if we feel that there is a change...
Sir, hold that thought, because I get what you're saying. With due respect, today there doesn't seem to be any military takeover of the country. Javed Jadoon Saab, you want to actually analyze both the answers?
Farrukh, I think there's a lot of dichotomy as far as Pakistan Muslim League ends rhetoric is concerned. They always talk about hybrid government, as you pointed out, and implying that there is one government in Islamabad and there's another government sitting somewhere else. I think that would be a bit unfair to Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, because the legal, lawful and constitutional government in Islamabad is formed by Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and led by Imran Khan. So moving on from this...
And with due respect, is it not part of the cultural zeitgeist? If I'm in government, I'm independent. If I'm in opposition, whosoever is in government is essentially being planted by somebody else.
Absolutely. I think given the past history of Pakistan Muslim League N, they really can't be exonerated as far as their involvement in establishment maneuvered governments were concerned in the 80s and 70s and so on and so forth. So I think we need to move on instead of getting involved in a unending debate which is not going to produce any positive results. So the question right now is, as you asked this question to from the PMLN representative, that is the PDM dead? I think PDM was never alive because of the diversity in political approaches and because of the contradictions in the designs and objectives of different political parties. It was not a pragmatic kind of composition of the political parties, because they wanted one thing, and the common objective was to remove the sitting government in Islamabad.
Okay, you're calling PDM they are the living dead.
Absolutely.
Is it what you mean?
Absolutely. Look at.
But here's the point. they say that PDM can never die because it might be undead, but it can never die because of one thing, the government. Government doesn't know how to divide and rule. There are many parties. Had it reached out to one of these groups, for now, at least for 2.5 years, it could have done away with PDM. Because those parties know that they are never going to be forgiven by PTI, PTI will never reach out. They will always be sitting together, whether you call it PDM, you call it something else.
I agree with you. I think the apolitical approach of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf government has been the real challenge and the real problem. And they stand to lose a lot because of their own political approach towards this political quagmire. They should have adopted a more pragmatic, more practical approach.
Okay.
They should have engaged the political parties. For example, right now, the opportunity has been thrown by Mr. Zardari. They can engage with Pakistan People's Party and they can try and create a wedge between PMLN and Pakistan People's Party, because this opportunity has been thrown by Mr. Zardari. And
in fact, they could have introduced a wedge inside the PMLN as well.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
On the day one, Shehbaz Sharif was continuously saying, reach out to me, otherwise my niece will take over.
And they ended up doing quite the opposite, because they put him, once again put him in jail and given a free hand to Maryam Nawaz Sharif, who has adopted a very aggressive and very confrontational approach towards Islamabad and towards Pakistan Army as well. And we have seen the kind of statements emanating from London and the kind of politicking being done by Maryam Nawaz. I don't believe that it is going to lead to logical conclusion as far as PDM is concerned, because I think Mr. Zardari does realize that confrontational approach adopted by Maryam Nawaz and Nawaz Sharif is not going to sort of get them where they would like themselves to be.
Let me flip the question. Let me ask you, is there a possibility that PMLN or their pro-reconciliation group or People's Party can actually work with the government without actually asking for some personal concessions for their leaders?
Why doesn't government test their intentions? I think they can reach out to them, and
because there's an example.
No, but
FATF, they were talking, and it ended up becoming a talk about NAB reform, and which actually would have totally done away with NAB.
But
so
I
it is
think
a fact.
They can throw the gauntlet once again, because now, given the statement coming from Mr. Zardari, now it's a different situation right now. They can definitely reach out to Zardari Saab and reach out to Shehbaz Sharif as well. If they can create some kind of working relations with one faction of Pakistan Muslim League and with Pakistan People's Party, I strongly believe it is going to benefit Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, and the rest of their tenure is going to be a productive tenure. Otherwise, they are going to consume themselves in confrontation with any set of political force.
When I come back to you, I'm going to ask which party aligns with which party suits PTI more, because People's Party is actually not too relevant in Punjab, where PTI actually wants to base itself. But I'm going to come back to you. Barrister Kalu, let me ask you one very direct question. Can you visualize a day when the Prime Minister of Pakistan picks up a phone, handset, and calls either Asif Ali Zardari or Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, or for that matter Shehbaz Sharif, and have a conversation with them?
Mr. Pitafi, if the leaders that you mentioned talk about Pakistan and have Pakistan dear to their hearts, the issues that matter to our national security and our stature in the international world, if they are willing to talk to us on that level, then no doubt Prime Minister Saab will talk to Bilawal, Asif Ali Zardari Sahib and Mian Shehbaz Sharif to try and help narrow the gap.
You see it as a possibility?
It is possible. I mean, I've always been a student of the fact that politics is the art of making the impossible the possible. So, but the problem that our government has faced is from day one, we've seen that the opposition en masse has refused to accept the legitimacy of the government, and even an educated person like Bilawal have to label my Prime Minister, Pakistan's Prime Minister, as Prime Minister-elect.
Okay.
I mean, what message did he wish to send to the people of Pakistan?
I get that, but with due respect, you said politics is the art of possible, right? Of the possible. Now the concern that opposition actually keeps on articulating is that you don't know the art of the possible. You keep on outsourcing it to other people. Earlier it was Jahangir Tareen Saab. No, he is not with you. For some reason he is not you are not very close. So you keep on outsourcing it to elements which are not within your control, rather than seizing the moment and reaching out personally. I mean, I understand that the Prime Minister has great opposition to Shehbaz Sharif's politics, Zardaris or Bilawals, but then you are part of the same parliament, from where you actually get all your legitimacy.
The thing is that we have leaders at the second and tertiary level who are reaching across the divide.
Yeah.
For example, we've got Pervez
But
Khattak
that
Saab.
is the concern, right?
We've got Pervez Khattak Saab. We've got
I
Shahid Qureshi
understand.
Saab.
Pervez Khattak Saab reaches out, or then it is the Speaker, or then it is the Chairman Senate. The Prime Minister is the head of executive. You see the difference between
We also have Shahid Qureshi Saab. He reaches
He's
across.
a great man.
He reaches out.
I'm a big fan, but with due respect, you know what I mean.
The one who battles is the Prime
Leader
Minister.
of the government has to reach out himself.
Jahangir Tareen Saab was also a member of the PTI. He was the Secretary General, and he was playing a very core
I
part.
know.
And he also used to
I
reach
know,
out. Yes.
but Bilawal is head of a party. Asif Ali Zardari is chairman of the, president of the party. Shehbaz Sharif is president of the party. You realize that another head of the party will have to reach out. Is there a possibility? Clearly.
Like I said, when these leaders, the names you mentioned, start talking about Pakistan first and start putting
How
the
will
country
you,
before
that
their
is a
personal
test,
interest.
right? It
Yes.
is a qualifier.
Yes.
How will you see that test and how will you judge its result?
I think the people of Pakistan will be better placed to assess the result.
No, people of Pakistan judge people or their elected representatives in the election.
Yes.
And that means we still are 2.5 years away from that moment.
Yes.
So till then what happens? What does Shehbaz Sharif or Zardari or Bilawal do that the Prime Minister is convinced that he can reach out to them?
Dr. Saab, what I can say thus far is that I will commend Pakistan People's Party for demonstrating their political maturity when they agreed not to resign from the system, the Sindh assemblies, and no doubt there will be progress made in the next coming weeks from the government as well to try and reach out. All I can say at this stage is that no doubt efforts are already underway to help achieve that.
Okay.
But if
mind you, PMLN has not resigned from the parliament either.
the thing with PMLN is, I will say to Rana Saab as well, Rana Saab, there's nothing stopping you or Fazlur Rahman Saab from resigning. You do not need the People's Party to resign. People's Party was never going to resign. I mean, even a
You
small...
want them to resign?
I mean, if they wish to resign, there's no doubt about it.
You still are answering my question about reaching out across the aisle. And you are telling them to resign?
I said there's nothing stopping them. I'm saying if they wish to resign, then our Prime Minister Imran Khan has said that there will be re-elections on all of the seats because we can't disenfranchise the people of Pakistan.
Right, Rana Saab, you want to come in and respond?
I think the process of resignations is that the government falls. So, with the People's Party not participating or delaying the decision, I think it wouldn't be a wise decision politically to go ahead and do it. So that is probably the main reason why we're not going alone ahead with it.
Okay.
So that's my answer.
Yeah. Is there a possibility of some kind of reconciliation between the government and your party?
You see, but today if there is a need of the day, it is for a charter of economy, and for that a consensus to be built, and so that the economic policies, we take them out of the politics of the country. And no one should play politics on the economy. And Shehbaz Sharif Saab, when he was elected as the opposition leader, not once but I think several times, he spoke in the National Assembly saying that we need a charter of economy and we need to build consensus on that. So obviously, if such a gesture comes from the government, the opposition, even if not wanting, will be forced think or rethink about its moves of ignoring the government's call. But what is most important here, Pitafi Saab, I believe, is that the accountability drive of this government has been a farce. It has been filled with a media trial. It's been filled with mudslinging and making sure that you play below the belt and you try to throw as much dirt possible on the media, on the opposite
I understand,
side.
Sahab, regarding media trial or whatever goes on media, today Prime Minister made an observation and that was quite interesting. Regarding the accountability process, you realize it is supposed to be independent and the government has practically, at least theoretically, it should have no control over it. But regarding the other part, Prime Minister today said that let opposition be and focus on service delivery, on governance. So that seems to be some kind of a signal that there is going to be less animus visible on television in coming days. Will you be able to work with that?
Accountability should go. This account drive should go ahead on full-fledged speed, but it should go quietly. It should go without throwing mudslinging, without name-calling, or without the media trial happening. It should happen in the background. And if that happens, I think, and then you're saying that if these institutes are independent, whereas when their performance report comes, they put it as their own claim. They claim this this NAB
it is very heartening to hear that at least you agree in principle that you can work with the government if there is less noise and there is less animus. Now let me flip the question and point out that there are certain pundits who think that the reason why Maryam Nawaz Sahiba keeps on attacking the state institutions is primarily because within her party there is another constituency, Shehbaz Sharif's constituency, which is pro-reconciliation. And in order to actually knock it out of the influence circle, she has to be this aggressive. Is there a possibility of a reconciliation within your party as well, sir? That Maryam Nawaz and Shehbaz Sharif can sit together and work out these issues?
If all of us refuse to see the elephant in the room and all of us say that it does not exist, it does not mean that it does not exist. It exists. And the history of Pakistan is a witness to it.
Which elephant are you talking about? Army? Army at this moment, with due respect, is sacrificing for your and my sake, sir. I mean, let us be honest about it. In the modern terror, even during your time, it was primarily the military officials that kept on sacrificing, and civilian, law enforcement agencies that kept on sacrificing their lives. Is it not counterintuitive to actually keep on criticizing somebody who's fighting and giving his life to save you and I?
Pitafi Saab, we love our army for that. My whole family background is from the army. We love Pakistani soldiers and we salute them. We are secure because of them. And we salute them for this service. But what we're talking about is the service beyond the constitution mandates them to do. It is going beyond their oath. So we are talking about those moves, not the normal their duty. We salute them for their duty, and we have to discuss them. We have to implement the Constitution of Pakistan. We have to improve democracy in Pakistan. We have to strengthen the institute.
Yeah, but you realize that when you talk about democracy, every citizen has a vote. And the people who are in uniform are also citizens in uniform, right? So they will always have an opinion, and you cannot actually say that your name magically appeared in Panama Papers. That was a dump that was created not by Pakistani government, by foreign media organizations. And in that dump, your leadership's name comes, so somehow Pakistan's establishment is conspiring against you, sir. You'll have to actually work out a rhetoric that is not merely a rhetoric. Is it not true?
Okay, this is how I'll respond to that. your judiciary ranks 120 out of 128 in the world. Is it an independent judiciary? Is it a judiciary which is working for the people of Pakistan to solve their problems where they're supposed to do?
Is the Election Commission of Pakistan independent or not?
When we see that the foreign funding case has not been solved since the last 7 years, obviously you're going to, raise questions. Why not?
Are you agreeing with the government that the Election Commission of Pakistan has not been able to satisfy all the stakeholders?
I think, since the last 2-3 months, Election Commission has been, working well, and we should appreciate on the fact that they have taken action.
There is a reason why I asked you this question, because that shows that the political parties keep on criticizing institutions when they don't get their favored, relief. They criticize them when they appreciate them the moment they get whatever they want, and it has nothing to do with the quality. Sir, I'm going to come back to you. Let me go to Javed Jadun, sir.
Absolutely, Farrukh. Even in the recent past, we have seen that they have been talking about establishment going neutral and then again issuing very contradictory statement. I think
no, they will not say this.
It is blue hot and blue hot.
This.
But even I think the vibes coming from Mariam Nawaz, that maybe establishment is because she's wasn't issuing the kind of statements or stylish statements which she was issuing. I think there are 3 possibilities for practically speaking as far as the government is concerned and the opposition, combined opposition is concerned. First for Mr. Imran Khan is to engage the Mariam Nawaz faction in Pakistan Muslim League, and I think that is close to impossible because of the give and take between the 2 camps or 2 parties, and Prime Minister Imran Khan would have to scale down from his high moral ground while engaging with the faction led by Mariam Nawaz. The other faction in Pakistan Muslim League is Shahbaz Sharif, which is I think quite a moderate faction, and they believe in non-confrontational politics, and they believe in engaging with the government as well. So your question was, when you said, when I get back, I'm going to answer that particular question of yours. The options for Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf are between Shahbaz Sharif camp and Pakistan People's Party. I think if I have to decide, I would go for Pakistan People's Party, because Pakistan People's Party is definitely a national party. They may not have representation from Punjab to the extent they used to have in the past. They may not have representation from KP or Balochistan, but I still believe Pakistan People's Party is a national cohesive force. They are a democratic party. You may disagree with certain policies pursued by Mr. Zardari. So I think engaging Pakistan People's Party would sort of deal an irreparable damage to Pakistan, to PDM. So in the way Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf government can have a rather peaceful tenure of 2.5 years, and they can concentrate on governance issues and delivering on the promises they made to the people of Pakistan, and introducing the kind of reforms which Prime Minister really wants to introduce in the country.
So on one side, the lesson is survive for now, deliver, wait for the elections, based on your performance, go to the people and ask for a bigger mandate when you can sort everybody out.
Absolutely, I think that would be
But here's the problem. In Punjab, where PTI has presence and People's Party keeps on struggling, Asif Ali Zardari's name, has a stigma attached to it. He used to be called Mr. 10%, right? I didn't call it. Other people used to call it. But when it comes to Shahbaz Sharif and Nawaz Sharif, you still have to sit with somebody to qualify that they are corrupt. So PTI doesn't compromise its image by actually attaching itself to People's Party rather than PMLN.
For being devil's advocate, who doesn't have the kind of stigma which is attached to Mr. Zardari? There are people in Pakistan Muslim League and there are people in ruling Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. So I think that would be extremely naive to believe that Pakistan People's Party is the only party which has a stigma attached to it, or whether it is Mr. 10%.
You realize that I'm talking about the indoctrination, whether it was right or wrong. of 2.5 decades, where repeatedly everybody in the media circle used to call him by that name. I think it is a pejorative. I don't agree with the label because you have to prove it in a court of law.
True, absolutely.
But in Punjab, you don't need to sell this label. They buy it readily. In Punjab, you still have to sell the idea that the Sharifs are corrupt.
I think credit goes to Pakistan Muslim League N by creating the kind of image of Pakistan People's Party, what we have it, the kind of image Pakistan People's Party does have right now. It was Pakistan Muslim League N which created the demon out of Mr. Zardari. It was Pakistan Muslim League N which constituted cases against its leadership. And now I think we all know that they sing together.
But at this moment, and with due respect, not just N, I mean our media, which is dominated by certain conservative circles. I mean, you know it, religious-minded people who just hated People's Party. And right now, in Punjab, People's Party is almost zero. I mean, where does it exist?
But for one thing, I really appreciate what Mr. Zardari said yesterday.
Okay.
He said that I believe fighting a political battle on the Parliament's platform rather than in the mountains, and rather than going for the long marches. I think that is the kind of approach you need from all political forces in Pakistan.
He could have said it 6 months earlier, and there would have been solution.
It's never too late. It's never too late.
Mr. Kalo, I understand you are going to talk about the government choices, but I am going to actually ask you to do the opposite. You have to convince yourself that Pakistan, hopefully, will never be one-party system. So there are two parties which are there. If you take them out, then the next parties, I tell you, are TLP and Jamaat-e-Islami, perhaps. They are not the kind of parties which people of Pakistan actually support that much, right? Which party are you ready to strengthen as your opponent but temporary ally?
That is a very difficult question. I mean,
I know it is impossible because then you'll have to compromise on certain principles.
I mean, if we were to strengthen another party, I'd be looking into other provinces such as the Baloch Awam Party or ANP for that matter in KPK. As for the other two parties, People's Party
you
and
want
Muslim League Noon,
BAP not to be your ally, permanent ally, but your opponent.
No, I wouldn't want to be opponent. I would want to see them to
but
be.
you realize I'm talking about two-party system or at least multi-party system, right?
I think the ANP, perhaps, or the
ANP.
or the yes, the ANP.
Anybody but Sharifs and Zardaris and Bhuttos.
The problem with the Sharifs and Zardaris is that these are not political parties. They're political heirlooms. That's what my party is fighting for. We want to see true democracy in these parties.
Your party doesn't have anybody of that stature or that kind of dynasty. It doesn't exist.
We don't have that dynasty in my party.
Can you think again? I can come back to you later. And think about Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and then tell me that there is no family which is in its entirety is part of politics?
No, we do have that at the tertiary or the sub-level, but the leader of our party does not have any...
Tertiary? I mean, I'm talking about...
Here we're talking about People's Party where...
Your chief executive of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the previous one.
Yes, I'm familiar who you're referring to, but...
Are you calling him tertiary?
He's not Imran Khan. He's not the Prime Minister.
But he is the defense minister.
He is the defense minister, but what I'm talking about, Prime Minister Imran Khan does not have...
Chief Minister.
Prime Minister Imran Khan does not have an heir who is his son or his daughter. So that's what I'm talking about. There is true democracy in my party.
But you'll realize that democracy will take care of all these problems if evolution continues, right? And at this moment, you already have made a concession by allowing the electables to come to the party. That's why you are in government.
I would beg to differ. We're not in government because of the electables. We're in government because of Prime Minister Imran Khan's crusade, which has been going on for the past 22 years. And
I respect that.
The electable
but
theory is being
who are
nullified.
your MNAs?
The electable theory was nullified.
How many MNAs are electable and how many are workers? Very quickly, percentage.
50%, yeah.
Thank you very much.
50%
is not a small number. I'm told that we have to conclude the program here, but let us hope in coming days we see better political discourse and some kind of harmony in the system. Barrister Abdullah Mumtaz Kalon, thank you very much for being part of the program. Javed Jadoon Sahab, always great having you in the show. Dana Ehsan Afzal Sahab, thank you very much for your very kind and very patient participation every time. Viewers, you have listened to our participants. Let us hope in coming days we see more focus on the Parliament, because all the other institutions seem to be functioning. There is only one that keeps on porpoising, which keeps on going up, down, and then getting static. Let us hope that the cradle of democracy, which is Parliament, actually works the miracles we expect from it, and that can happen when political parties somehow find a way to work together despite retaining their differences. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.
In the era of global news coverage, we aim to tell the truth. Through meticulous discussions and in-depth analyses about stories that matter the most. We underline key events as and when they happen. Watch Newsroom with me, Umar Khalid Bak, for a daily roundup of the latest international and local top stories.
There will come a time when we shall live in the valleys of heaven. The days we spent, the nights we cried, we wondered but knew not why. For God has sent us, please don't torment us. Just hurt and lonely, therefore shine. You can't retrieve us, so please believe us. Just hurt and lonely, therefore shine. There will come a time when we shall laugh and smile into the sun. Our happy faces shall light the moon, and you'll know our battle is won. This world will end, so try and comprehend that no one lives forever. In the promised land,